under operation.
Should be under operation, yes.
Operation one more.
And you can, for making it more interesting, you can think iOS users,
Yes.
iPad users. Very nice. Right, but the aspects also changes when you're thinking of findability of that thing. How will this work on iPad? Is your design scalable? Right? Or you need multiple designs to address this feature change. Did you think of this? Did your designers think of it? Right? Or you want to wait for users to tell this doesn't work on iPad? Because not everything can be done all at once. Otherwise we do this checklist once and directly build full product, right? That's not how it works. So you need to be able to at least bring these possibilities in everybody's consciousness, and let responsible people decide what they want to do. But if nobody does this exercise and analysis, you will always have things hidden and which will come back as, change request or something from the production, or somebody will yell at you and then you will see, oops, we should have thought of it. Why to do things later when you can already think of those earlier and decide to do them later?
When you change device, those
See, that's
Auto restart.
History.
Auto restart. Under operation, I believe.
could be in operation, it could be maybe time period instance, like for how long you are able to about encrypted sets.
The things again, like when we having this kind of sharing, right, it can be shared to the external, the social sharing. Social sharing.
Yeah, it could also be an intersection between platform and function, because which platform you are sharing.
File, image, but we can also we have a sharing link. Sometimes I think also we can also share and to have.
If you are not able to understand how your day-to-day work is contributing to the business goal of your organization, something is terribly wrong. And don't wait for people to fix it by making wrong decisions. You can always fix that problem by taking ownership on your own side and asking right question and bringing things in conversation. That might help people understand. So if a tester comes and tells me, we are working on this feature but this team has already implemented it, why can't we just reuse it? That's much better idea to do that instead of implementing the build. But who will do the job? Clear?
Yeah.
Very good. So let's see what do we have. Testability we will discuss more in detail shortly. And okay.
Sorry, about this checklist, are we going to...
So test early, test small, and test continuously. Right? It's important to understand what this really means. Test early basically is about starting as early as possible and not necessarily just testing it, but contributing in terms of QX sessions that we discussed in morning, right? That's the opportunity for you to test. Testing doesn't necessarily have to be about clicking buttons and checking the product itself. You can still test when the ideation phase is there and you are still discussing ideas. You don't necessarily need a physical form of stuff to start your testing, right? So try to understand in your context how you are contributing through testing at different phases. How you are testing through ideation, how you are going to test during development, how you are going to test during deployment. There are so many possibilities where things can go wrong. So it's on you to understand that testing happens at every single stage of software, and you need to know how to contribute there by performing your test activities. We discussed QA sessions, quality criteria sessions in morning. They all are related to testing on the left side of things, right? Shift left. We discussed about automation and writing automation for different applications there that corresponds to testing that you can do during the development phase itself. The actual testing that you typically can perform during the implementation phase, and then production telemetry that we discussed in morning can help you understand what's going on in production, what kind of logs are there, what you can learn from those logs to implement new kind of test cases and scenarios that you did not think of. So, higher workflow of implementing QCSD to improve and establish quality culture would be to involve yourself early enough during design phase. Start having these quality criteria sessions, create dedicated user stories, get your stakeholders aligned with the expectations for quality, perform QX sessions to mitigate the gaps between design team and system teams, which are different teams. During build phase, you can do the SFTW analysis that we just did right now in the PCO section on the kit level, and find out if there are any obvious gaps in the requirement or if there are things that nobody thought out. Compare your architects, your POs to think of those possibilities and give you answers, or at least create a backlog for these things require answer for. Then create an epic based test strategy. So basically what we discussed, all of this helps you understand how things are supposed to work, because certain things cannot be applied at user stories if they are too small. So you can perform the same activity on epic level and you can create a strategy. The strategy that caters to all the possibilities that you discover in the analysis. Define who is going to take care of what kind of testing, what kind of preparation you need to do. If you are multiple teams are going to deliver something at simultaneous time, then you need to think of testing those things together, right? So that basically corresponds to epic based strategy. You make sure that your acceptance criteria that was written before and your acceptance criteria that is to be fine-tuned after this assessment, there is a difference. You need to make sure that you are taking your learnings from this assessment back and asking people to change the acceptance criteria, because ultimately that is still the source of truth for your code to follow, right? And during development phase, developers can start writing code against the acceptance criteria, because I firmly believe that developers can certainly take responsibility for testing at least the acceptance criteria on their side. I don't understand why you would need someone else to test the acceptance criteria and tell you this does not work. Because as a programmer, if I'm writing a code, it's my responsibility to make sure that it fulfills the acceptance criteria it is written for. And it is my responsibility to make sure that I'm thinking of all the possibilities within that acceptance criteria. And what testers can do during this time is they can write automation within the sprint to save their regression efforts when all the scenarios are already developed. And then the professional tester can basically contribute to exploratory testing, doing deeper testing and understanding, and finding the things that were only possible to be found through experimentation. Because you cannot find everything up front through this analysis. You still have to perform experiments, you still have to do different kind of hacks and see how the application behaves, right? And as a periodic activities, you can revisit your regression packs. Sometimes people write automation for 10,000 test cases and they keep running it for 10 years. Nobody really bothers to check if those tests are relevant, if they are giving any business value, if they even make sense. So running such automation doesn't make sense. Make a habit of repeatedly, regularly visiting your regression, be it automated or manual, and see if you really need to execute those test cases anymore. Sometimes you need to reprioritize some tests because the risk in those areas is increased. Sometimes you can completely stop some test cases altogether, right? Exploratory testing is important. We will discuss testability shortly. And make sure to do regular assessment of progression logs to understand how things in production are actually happening, how users are really using the software, to think of possibilities that you cannot think of upfront. Okay? And if you are doing this, what you are doing ultimately is you are distributing this additional load that typically gets added by suddenly doing things, suddenly adding more testers and developers in team, suddenly trying to do lots of things. you are basically distributing this responsibility of quality among the entire project team, and that's how you add negative feedback loop in your system to counterbalance it against these positive loops that made it very heavy. And by introducing these negative loops through this distribution, it's simple physics. You are basically protecting your system from running into collapse mode, and that's way bigger purpose you can serve as a tester beyond finding defects. So that's my story. If you can implement something like storybook to make your life easier, because if your testing is mostly front end heavy, quite a lot of that part is already testable with storybook implementation. You do not have to wait for back-end piece to be ready. You do not have to wait for front-end code to be deployed in your test environment. There is a lot more that you can test early enough. So imagine the amount of time and efforts and rework you're saving by implementing technology and doing like this. And this basically very strongly supports the idea we discussed in the morning about test early, test often, test continuously. It doesn't necessarily have to be manual testing. You need to automate what is easy to automate and what should be automated, so that you can spend more time on doing technical explorations and perform exploratory testing. Any questions? Maybe I can show you some examples so you understand what this storybook thing is about. But it's high time that you start getting your hands dirty with code. Useful for you as an automation tester as well, and you can basically perform all sort of operations. So it shows the code here, you know what is going on. If you're adding, it tells you what is going to happen. It is showing you this skeleton. I'm just looking for some interaction test, but looks like this thing changed. Look at this. Let's see something that's happening. Unfortunately, there is nothing. But if you see, the storybook also allows you to perform automated accessibility checks. So here on the component level itself, it tells you that it is passing all kind of accessibility. So accessibility testing doesn't necessarily have to be through some browser extension or Xcode running on the Chrome device. You can automate quite a lot of it on component level itself. And the benefit of automating it on component level is when you are writing the component once, you are already making it compliant with accessibility standards. So whoever is reusing that component doesn't have to do the accessibility related changes again. Make sense? Okay. I think let's take a coffee. I see all of you or most of you are struggling keeping away, and I can completely understand. So please grab yourself a coffee and please come back in 5 minutes. Yes. Yes. It's an open source. It literally takes less than 20 minutes to get it all working. Most of the open source solutions I am aware of, they are also offering all kind of configuration possibilities for using it locally. And this particular one, this is just a developer dependency. It doesn't send anything on cloud for now. You can use it locally or you can implement it on your on-premise cloud, for example. But this doesn't go as part of any problems in software. It doesn't necessarily mean it's just code issues. As we discussed in part, it could be about project, it could be about the people, it could be about infrastructure, it could be about testability. So different kind of testability matter. This comes from the heuristic of testability. I will also share that with you. Epistemic testability talks about how narrow is the gap between the knowledge people are supposed to have versus what they know. Right? If you put some newbie who doesn't know anything about trading, and if that person is writing applications for trading, he is likely to make mistakes. Same applies to testers, right? And also, what kind of support they have in improving that knowledge. Is there any documentation available, or they are just reading the code which was so badly done, which is not readable. Project related testability more or less talks about project notion of quality. It refers to things that get influenced by changing the conditions under which we must test. So these observations are for sample from some of the projects I work with. These are the typical problems that happen, and these are the recommendations I would typically make to overcome those challenges. Right? Value related testability talks about things that get affected by changing the quality standard or lack of it. If your project doesn't have any established quality criteria, everybody will say, I expected this to be charismatic, but what does charisma mean? Right? Do you want it yellow or black? If they say the performance is poor, but who gets to decide what is good performance? It all needs to be documented, discussed, and agreed upon. Subjective testability talks about changing things that get affected by changing the test or test processes. Maybe the test manager changed and he says, let's drop this all, we will do session-based test management. People need to know what it means. People need to know if this is going to work in the context you are working with. If somebody says, don't use this high-level checklist, let's start documenting detailed test cases. The consequences are similar. So you need to understand and you need to be able to assess the project situation for this different kind of testability, because it helps you understand what kind of problems are supposed to be solved by which people. Some of these findings are for leadership to make decisions about. Some of the problems are probably for engineering manager to understand how developers are doing. Some of the problems are for maybe test manager and test architects to understand what kind of investment they can make on the testing side. And some more increasing testability we discussed. All in all, having this exercise learning or done in your projects will help you understand the overall health of your system in testability point of view, that ultimately translates to the status of quality and the kind of culture of quality you have in testing. So if you ask me, Lalit, thank you for the whole day of knowledge sharing. Where do we start after we go back? My recommendation would be start with this. Understand this and try to think of these different kind of testabilities in your project situation. Understand where the problems are. Maybe this is what I did as an internal assessment, and I would like your support to take this further. And that will open lots of interesting conversations that will eventually make everybody's life easier. Okay, no, we are not doing this. I feel sorry for you. Do you want to try doing this exercise as the last exercise of the day? No. I got answer from me. I understand, don't worry. But basically take this home and try to do it within your team as one of the exercises. Do you have community of practice like you do in your company? Yeah. So maybe in one of the community of practice sessions you could introduce this and ask for their assessment of, hey, what do you think about epistemic testability in our organization? Whatever. And from there you will get lots of useful, interesting inputs that will help you make further decision making. Okay. There is a very interesting book written by Ashwinder and Rob Mini. I think it's Team Guide for Testability. Feel free to read it. It is very interesting. The 3 P's I talk about: people, project, and product. Rob and Ash talk about 10 P's of testability, but more or less what we cover throughout the day is essentially also covered and addressed with this different kind of testability they're talking about. But very, very useful. And that's pretty much it from my